Every time tension rises with Iran, the same assumption comes back. That if pressure keeps increasing, something has to give. Right now, the United States has deployed a massive armada to the Arabian Sea. Iran announced, then denied military exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. Diplomatic channels are open, both sides say they are talking. And yet nothing moves toward resolution. This has been the pattern for 45 years. The US-Iran confrontation escalates, then de-escalates, then escalates again. Sanctions pile up, threats intensify, strikes happen, negotiations stall, and the crisis just continues. Iran is sanctioned, isolated, economically strained. The United States is applying pressure openly, publicly, relentlessly. By every old rule of geopolitics, this should move toward a clear outcome. But it doesn't. It just hangs there. No collapse, no clean deal, no decisive break. That is because Iran is not Iraq or Libya. Iran knows that, and Americans understand that. Hello, I'm Venkatraman, and this is Raman Effect, where we look at geopolitics not through the lens of what everyone is already seeing, but through the patterns they are missing. And what everyone is missing right now is why this Iran crisis never reaches a conclusion. I'll show you exactly what Iran did to make themselves immune to the old playbook. Let us start with what is happening right now. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is sitting in the Arabian Sea. Trump deployed what he called a massive armada toward Iran this week. This is one of the biggest US military buildups in the Middle East in recent years, second only to what we saw before the June strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. And here's where it gets very interesting. Iran announced on Thursday that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGC, would conduct live-fire exercises in the Strait of Hormuz on February 1st and 2nd. The US Central Command, which oversees American military operations in the Middle East, put out a blunt warning. Any unsafe behavior near our forces risks collision and escalation. Then on Sunday, Iran denied the whole thing. An Iranian official told Reuters there was no plan for the guards to hold military exercises there. There was no official announcement about it, only media reports which were wrong. Yeah, blame the media. Think about that. Announce exercises, watch the world react, then deny they were ever planned. That is the dance. This exact pattern has played out for decades. Pressure increases, threats escalate, forces deploy, oil prices spike, and then nothing resolves. Both sides are talking now. Trump said on Saturday that Iran is seriously talking to us. Tehran confirmed diplomatic channels are open. Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Turkey all scrambling to mediate. But here's my take. This crisis does not resolve because it is not designed to. Everyone thinks pressure eventually works. Squeeze hard enough, Iran breaks. That model worked in Iraq. Remove Saddam, accept the chaos, move on. Iran has made itself immune to that playbook. Not by being stronger than America, that is impossible, by making the cost of winning higher than anyone wants to pay. And I'll show you exactly how they did that in just a moment. To understand what is really happening, you need to go back to 2003, the US invasion of Iraq. That's when Iran learned the most important lesson in modern geopolitics. Regional vacuums do not stay empty. Before the invasion, Iraq under Saddam was Iran's primary regional rival. They fought a brutal 8-year war in the 1980s. Saddam contained Iranian influence, then America removed him. Think about the structural difference. Iraq was a regime sitting on top of a country. Saddam's power was concentrated in Baghdad, in his Republican Guard, in his inner circle. And remove him, and the structure collapses. Iran looked at that and said, we will never let our power be that concentrated, so they wove themselves into the region. Hezbollah in Lebanon, $700 million annually from Tehran. That's not a proxy, that's a strategic pillar. Iraqi militias integrated into the popular mobilization forces supported through the IRGC Quds force with financing, training, arms, everything. The Houthis in Yemen controlling shipping lanes through which 20% of the world's oil flows. Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Assad's regime in Syria. This is not just influence, this is entrenchment. Every pressure point America or Israel could use against Iran is now entangled with someone else's stability. You cannot hit Iran's nuclear program without affecting regional oil markets. You cannot blockade the Strait of Hormuz without China, India, Japan, and South Korea, who received 69% of Hormuz crude in 2024, feeling immediate pain. You cannot collapse the regime without creating a power vacuum that makes Iraq's chaos look very organized. Iran did not survive decades of pressure by being strong. They survived by making themselves impossible to cleanly remove. And there's a specific reason why even America's strongest allies in the region do not want Iran to collapse. I'll get to that in just a few minutes. Now let us break down what is actually sustaining this. The economic paradox. Iran's economy is in terrible shape. GDP growth at 0.3% for 2025, basically zero. The rial crossed 1 million to the US dollar in March 2025. By late 2025, it was trading between 1.3 and 1.5 million. Inflation running at 42%. Oil exports fell by 60 to 80% after sanctions reimposed. By every metric, sanctions should have worked. But here's what happened instead. They created a sanctions economy. Trade got forced into grey and black channels. Oil sold through front companies and shadow fleets. Imports through informal networks. And who controls these channels? The regime and the connected elites. Sanctions did not weaken the Iranian regime. They gave the elite more control over survival. Iran lost 17 percentage points of its middle class from 2012 to 2019 because of these sanctions. The people suffering? Ordinary Iranians. That's what triggered the protests that started December 28 when the rial collapsed to record lows. Thousands reportedly killed in this crackdown. The regime became more entrenched, not less. Now let us talk about the math related to the Strait of Hormuz. 20 million barrels per day transit the Strait of Hormuz. That's 21% of global petroleum consumption. More than a quarter of a world's maritime oil trade goes through that 21-mile wide choke point. Plus 22% of global liquefied natural gas trade, primarily from Qatar. China, India, Japan, South Korea receive 84% of the crude moving through that strait. Saudi Arabia alone moves 5.5 million barrels per day through Hormuz, 38% of total flows. Iran controls the northern shore. Over 6,000 naval mines, fast attack boats, shore-to-sea missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles. The IRGC ran Iqtidar might exercises throughout January. And even the fake announcement about exercise in the strait this week was enough to get everyone's attention. Can the US Navy keep Hormuz open? Probably. But here's a calculation. Iran does not need to close it. They just need to threaten it. Oil hit $64 per barrel just on the threat of disruption in January. Analysts say a complete closure could drive prices up $10 to $20 per barrel within days. Even Saudi Arabia and UAE, who have alternative pipelines, would see refined products and LNG exports affected. Their combined pipeline capacity, 6.5 million barrels per day, cannot offset full Hormuz disruption. Iran's leverage is not military strength, it is global dependency on stability in waters they can destabilize. Israel and the US spent 2024 and 2025 systematically dismantling Iran's proxy network. Hamas leadership decimated. Hezbollah's Nasrallah killed. June 2025 saw Israeli and US airstrikes hit Iranian nuclear facilities, destroyed S-300 air defense systems, targeted ballistic missile production. Iran actually looked beaten. But here's what, it is still standing. Iran's proxies in Iraq remain largely intact. The popular mobilization forces still dominate parliament, control ministries, influence the judiciary. And what about the Houthis? Still attacking Red Sea shipping, still firing missiles toward Israel, and here is the key. Iran's relationship with these groups is not command and control. It is ideological, financial, and strategic alignment with autonomy. That means, when degraded, this network adapts rather than disappears. The US and Israel cannot hit every node without expanding the war beyond containment. Watch who is panicking about US-Iran escalation. Qatar mediated talks. Their prime minister flew to Tehran on January 31st to de-escalate. Saudi Arabia and UAE told Washington explicitly, you cannot use our airspace for strikes on Iran. Turkey, Oman, Iraq, all running diplomatic interference. Why? Because Gulf states learned from 2003. A destabilized Iran is dangerous, but a collapsed Iran is catastrophic. Who fills that vacuum? Ethnic separatists in Kurdistan, Balochistan, Azerbaijan. IRGC hardliners taking full control. Civil war spilling over into Iraq, Afghanistan, and probably Pakistan. Saudi Arabia shares a border with potential Iranian chaos then. UAE's economy depends on shipping lanes Iran can close. Regional powers are not protecting Iran, they are protecting themselves from the consequences of a potential Iran's collapse. Every US military option now has to account for not just Tehran's response, but Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Doha saying, not through our territory. So what are the only visible options left for global powers now? Let me walk you through each one and show you why none of them actually work. Maximum pressure until collapse. You see, sanctions have been there since 1979. Maximum pressure under Trump's first term and now it is second term. Budget deficits, electricity shortages, water crisis, currency collapse at over 1 million reals per dollar. The protests that started in December were brutally suppressed, thousands of innocent Iranians reportedly killed. The European Union designated the IRGC a terrorist organization in response. Yet, the regime has not fallen. Why? Iran lacks a credible organized opposition capable of governing. The exiled opposition is fragmented and weak. The domestic opposition is suppressed. Experts warn that externally imposed regime change would likely produce either IRGC taking over or a civil war, not democracy. Maximum pressure produces economic pain, not political change. Option 2. Military strike to eliminate the nuclear program. You see, Israel and the US hit Fordo, Natanz and other deeply buried facilities in June. Did it work? Iran had stockpiled over 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% by May 2025 and close to weapons grade 90%. After the June strikes, hardliners are pushing to weaponize rather than negotiate. A senior Iranian advisor said it straight on state TV. Washington's demands translate into disarming yourself so we could strike you when we want. Look at the lesson Iran is learning. Libya gave up nukes, Gaddafi was killed 8 years later. Ukraine gave up nukes, Russia invaded. Iran stayed at the nuclear threshold and got bombed anyway. The message? Only actual weapons provide security, and if Iran goes for a bomb after being struck at the threshold, what does that tell every other country watching? Saudi Arabia has deepening defense ties with Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. Turkey has signaled interest in independent capabilities. Military strikes do not eliminate the program, they accelerate weaponization and risk a regional nuclear cascade. And now the option 3. Negotiated deal. You see, Trump set a 60-day deadline in April 2025. Talks happened in Muscat, Rome, multiple rounds. The deadline passed. Israel attacked Iran in June, triggering the 12-day war. Now talks are happening again. Qatar is mediating. But the problem? Trump wants zero enrichment, ballistic missile limits, end to proxy support. Iran wants sanctions relief, recognition of nuclear rights, no threat of attack. Iranian officials won't negotiate under the shadow of threats. Trump says the Armada stays until Iran agrees. That's not negotiation, that's coerced surrender. And Iran has shown for 45 years they would rather endure sanctions than accept submission. So what actually happens then? The crisis continues. Pressure without resolution, threats without follow-through, negotiations without breakthrough. Because Iran has positioned itself in the gap between those options. Weak enough that pressure hurts, strong enough that collapse is not imminent. Entangled enough that military action triggers uncontrollable consequences. Ideological enough that coerced deals are rejected. This is not stalemate, this is equilibrium, where the cost of changing the status quo exceeds the cost of maintaining it for everyone. America cannot afford another Iraq-style occupation. Israel can strike but cannot occupy. Gulf states cannot risk Iran's collapse. China needs Iranian oil but will not defend Tehran militarily. And Iran? They just need everyone else to decide that making them lose costs too much. Iran is not Iraq. Iraq was a regime you could remove. Iran is a system you're entangled with. And here's a real reason about the power in the 21st century. Control matters more than strength. America is stronger than Iran by every military measure, world's strongest military, but strength does not guarantee control when the target has woven itself into the global system. When 20% of the world's oil flows through waters they can threaten, when proxies operate across 5 countries, when economic collapse produces refugee flows, not regime change, when every solution creates 10 new problems, this is why the crisis remains exactly where it is. Not frozen, not resolved, just waiting. Waiting for someone to decide that the cost of resolution, the real resolution, is worth paying. Until then, armadas will deploy, exercises will be announced and denied, negotiations will stall, sanctions will tighten, and nothing will fundamentally change. Because that's the system Iran built, and that is the system everyone else is now trapped in. So here's my question. If neither maximum pressure nor military strikes nor negotiated deals can resolve this, what actually can change the equation? What breaks this cycle? Or is this just what the next decade looks like? I want to hear what you think about this. Share your thoughts in the comments below. But let me say this clearly. Please engage respectfully, have strong opinions, challenge each other's ideas, disagree passionately if you must. But the moment you resort to racial slurs, personal insults, or filthy language in the comment section, you lose the right to be heard. Free speech is not a mere right when respect is lost in that speech, because it takes away the sanctity of what we are trying to do here. So please debate, think, question, but do it with dignity. And if this analysis gave you a different framework for understanding what's actually happening, please hit subscribe, because this story is not ending anytime soon. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.